One restless night, our 5-year-old daughter woke up twice, setting off a chain of events that left our household in turmoil. It all started when our little one stirred in her sleep, signaling her need for comfort. I decided to step in and help her get back to sleep, but she had a specific request. She wanted her mom. Earlier that evening, my wife had promised her some special snuggle time upon her return from work. But our daughter had already drifted off to dreamland when my wife finally got home. In my quest to provide the comfort our daughter sought, I roused my wife from her slumber. She was understandably a bit annoyed, but she agreed to help put our daughter back to sleep. My wife brought our daughter to our bed, where she could sleep soundly and free from discomfort caused by her stuffy nose and minor cold. Fortunately, no fever was involved. The plan was for me to transfer our daughter back to her own bed when it was time for me to retire for the night. As the hours ticked by and the moment approached for me to carry out the transition, I cautiously entered our daughter's room. Before I could even take a couple of steps, she woke up. Attempting to guide her back to her own bed proved futile. She squirmed, kicked, and protested vehemently, expressing her strong desire to remain in our comforting presence. Her restlessness, in turn, roused my wife for the second time that night. When my wife woke up, she wasn't in the mood to deal with the situation. In a moment of frustration, she decided that our daughter could stay in our bed for the rest of the night. This was not what we had initially planned or agreed upon. I voiced my objection, highlighting that this deviation from our plan was not ideal. Our disagreement escalated rapidly into a heated argument. Harsh words were exchanged, and tension hung heavy in the air. Our daughter lay peacefully asleep amidst the chaos, blissfully unaware of the turmoil we were experiencing. The night concluded with our daughter still nestled in our bed, my wife and I locked in a bitter standoff, and my silent gesture of pushing my back against hers as a symbolic message, "Please leave the bed." The morning brought no respite from the tension. My wife remained furious, refusing to engage in conversation with me and symbolically removing her wedding ring, a move she often used to provoke a reaction, as she saw my sentimental attachment to the ring as mere sentimentality for a piece of shiny metal. In the evening, she suggested we have a serious talk about our relationship, with a particular focus on the incident involving the pushing. It was clear that our argument had exposed deeper issues simmering beneath the surface. As we faced the impending conversation, the challenge before us was to navigate through the tangled emotions and misunderstandings that had arisen from a seemingly ordinary night disrupted by a restless child. Our relationship was at a crossroads, and the path forward was uncertain. The tension between my wife and me following that tumultuous night hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud refusing to dissipate. The morning sun rose, casting its golden glow into our home, but it did little to thaw the icy silence that had settled between us. With our daughter's cheerful morning chatter serving as an ironic backdrop, we continued our cold standoff. My wife had removed her wedding ring, a symbolic act she used on occasion to express her frustration. To her, it was a shiny piece of metal, but to me, it represented the bond we shared, a bond now tested by the strains of our argument. As evening approached, my wife made it clear that we needed to address the simmering issues in our relationship, focusing particularly on the incident involving the pushing. It was clear that this was more than just a disagreement about our daughter's sleeping arrangements. It had unearthed deeper emotions and long-standing grievances. As we settled into a quiet corner of our home, the air felt charged with the weight of unspoken words. We both knew that the conversation ahead would be pivotal in defining the future of our relationship. My wife began, her voice tinged with a mix of frustration and hurt. She expressed her dissatisfaction with how our recent arguments had unfolded, highlighting my perceived lack of understanding and support during difficult moments. She felt that I was too rigid in my expectations, especially regarding our daughter's sleep habits. In response, I acknowledged my own feelings of frustration and disappointment. I explained that I had wanted our daughter to stick to our agreed-upon plan, not to defy it by allowing her into our bed. My concerns had been rooted in a desire for consistency and discipline in her routine. Our conversation quickly evolved into a broader discussion about the challenges we had been facing in our relationship. We explored how our roles as parents had affected our roles as partners. My wife mentioned feeling overwhelmed by her responsibilities at work and home, while I confessed to sometimes feeling left out or undervalued. We also delved into our individual communication styles, recognizing that they had contributed to our recent arguments. My wife tended to become defensive when she felt criticized, while I often defaulted to stubbornness when I felt my point of view was being dismissed. Despite the growing tension during our conversation, there was an underlying sense of relief in finally addressing our issues openly. We both acknowledged that there was love between us, but it had been overshadowed by recent conflicts and miscommunication. As the evening wore on, our conversation shifted toward potential solutions. We discussed seeking couples counseling as a way to improve our communication and address deeper issues. This idea brought a glimmer of hope, a sense that we were both willing to put in the effort to rebuild our relationship. With our conversation concluded for the night, we retired to separate rooms, still emotionally distant but with a shared understanding that we needed to work through our problems. The road ahead remained uncertain, and the wounds from that sleepless night would take time to heal. However, we were determined to navigate the path toward a healthier, more resilient relationship, one that could weather the storms and stand strong in the light of day.